It was a quiet evening, too quiet. The kind of quiet that clings to the corners of the kitchen like fruit flies in the summer. I had just returned from a long day, barefoot, tired, and a little smug about the tropical brew bubbling peacefully on the counter. My pineapple tapachi. Homemade, fizzy, funky, and full of probiotic promise. It had been fermenting for 3 glorious days. I approached the jar with reverence. The golden liquid shimmered in the low kitchen light, crowned by a film of foam that looked a little too lively. And that's when it happened. I cracked the lid. At first, just a hiss, gentle, whispery. Then the hiss grew teeth. Before I could even blink, the jar erupted with the rage of 1,000 pineapples. Foam shot skyward in a geyser of tropical vengeance. Liquid sprayed the ceiling, the backsplash, my face, my freshly washed hair. It was as if the ghost of fermentation past had possessed the brew, and I, poor innocent barefoot me, had summoned its wrath. I stumbled back in horror. The counter was soaked. The floor was slick. My kitchen looked like the aftermath of a tiki party gone wrong. And the smell, sweet, sharp, and sinister. I stood in sticky silence, the jar still foaming like a volcano that refused to die, hands outstretched like a sacrifice to the fermentation gods. Was it over? Was the beast appeased? Only time and several rolls of paper towel would tell. Welcome back to the Cultured Podcast, where fermentation gets weird, wild, and wonderfully probiotic. I am your host, Natalie, home fermenter, kitchen experimenter, and occasional microbial disaster survivor. Today's episode is going to be a little different and a little sticky. We're diving into the dark side of fermentation, the fails, the flops, the explosions, and yes, the furry blue mold colonies that took over my countertop like a sci-fi horror film. Because let's be real, you don't always see these on Instagram. You see the glossy bottles, the bubbly jars, the perfect sourdough crumb, but behind every success is a slightly traumatized person who once opened a jar of pineapple tapachi that erupted like Mount Vesuvius. And spoiler alert, yes, that was me. So if you ever wondered, is it supposed to smell like that? Or why is my kimchi hissing at me? You're in the right place, my friend. This episode is proof that it's totally okay to mess up. Every moldy ferment is just a lesson in disguise. So let's laugh, learn, and maybe cry just a little together. Let's get into it. What did I learn from my exploding tapachi incident? I learned just how important it is to burp your jars. It is so important. I have also learned that pineapple is extremely active and to always approach with caution. My tip is to do a series of small burps, and as it looks as if the bubble's about to overtake the bottle and come pouring out, you close it and open and close just a series of small burps until you are sure your jar is no longer going to erupt all over you. And finally, when it comes to using fruits and spices that are very active like ginger and pineapple, you do not need to add any additional sugar for the fermentation process. The fruits and the spices have more than enough. Story number 1. The exploding kombucha bottle. Let's start with a bang. Literally, I once made a batch of kombucha that I was extremely proud of. It was busy my second ferment, flavored with fresh ginger and hibiscus. I remember bottling it, lining the jars up like little sparkling soldiers on my countertop. I thought I was a genius. What I didn't realize was I had bottled it a little too early. There was still so much sugar left, and those yeasts, they were hungry. About 2 days in the secondary fermentation, I heard this pop from the other room, then another, then a crash. I sprinted to the kitchen thinking something had fallen, and it hadn't. My favorite bottle had exploded. Shards of glass and sticky pink tea were everywhere. It looked like a kombucha crime scene. It even hit the ceiling. I didn't know how fizzy tea could become a rocket. So what went wrong? I sealed the bottles too tightly, bottled them too soon, and left them somewhere a little bit too warm. It was summertime after all. And I didn't burp my bottles. Not only that, the glass the bottle was made from was not pressure rated, so these bottles were not designed to handle powerful fizzy drinks in the first place. And for those of you who don't know what burping means, it is a fancy way of saying open the lid once in a while, or at least once a day, to release the CO2 pressure buildup. So my lessons learned: let it ferment in its primary fermentation until it is ready. Then bottle. Burp my bottles at least once a day during the second fermentation. And always bottle in safe pressure-rated glass and not the same reused kombucha bottle from the store or second-hand wine bottles or any other glassware that you're not sure of. So yes, kombucha taught me about carbonation, timing, and apparently some kitchen safety. Story number 2, moldy kraut mayhem. This is one of my most heartbreaking stories. Let's talk sauerkraut, or what was supposed to be sauerkraut. This one's a classic mistake. I thought I could just shred some cabbage, toss in the mason jar, sprinkle salt, and walk away like a fermentation queen. What I didn't do was make sure all of the cabbage was submerged in liquid, use a proper fermentation weight, or keep it in the right temperature zone. What I came back to 5 days later was something straight out of Stranger Things. White mold, green mold, a weird fluffy layer that looked like a sour cabbage snowstorm. The smell, sharp, but also kind of wrong, and a little bit like my compost bin. I panicked, Googled, panicked some more, and then finally learned that, firstly, mold grows when veggies are not fully submerged under the liquid. Mold grows when you're not using enough salt. And mold also grows when it's either too hot or too cold. Usually when it's a little bit too cold and the fermentation process is slowed down and giving you a bigger window of time where mold can set in. I had to toss that kraut into the compost where it smelled like it belonged. I mourned the cabbage, rinsed up my bottles, and started over. Now I use fermentation weights. Please use glass, non-porous weights. Do not use any of the following: rocks, crystals. Some people have used crystals. Please don't use crystals. Tins. Please do not use tins. You're guaranteed to have mold in your ferment if you use tins as a weight. Anything that is made out of wood, please do not use wood. I recommend using glass, solid glass, sterilized glass, anything that can be used in glass as a weight. I also check my brine daily and make sure that all the contents in the jar are below the brine level. And I keep it at a good room temperature where I can. I also keep it away from my other ferments because I have discovered cross-contamination can happen. You just need one ferment to get mold, and those mold spores will easily spread out to your other ferments. Unfortunately, it does happen. Here's a quick tip. Not all white stuff is mold. Sometimes it's harmless cam yeast. But when in doubt, throw it out and maybe take a picture first for science or for a cautionary tale. or just for your records? My next story, SCOBY sadness. The SCOBY. My first SCOBY freaked me out so much. It looked like a jellyfish, then a jellyfish with a moustache, then a jellyfish with a bad case of dandruff. One day I saw a weird dark patch on it and panicked. It's mold, it's dead, it's going to poison me. I nearly tossed the whole batch. Spoiler, it wasn't mold. It was just a new SCOBY layer forming with trapped tea particles and a little bit of fruit. I had been feeding my SCOBY a bit of fruit for the natural sugars. So here's what I learned. A healthy SCOBY can look weird. It's not supposed to be pretty. In fact, it can be downright ugly looking. And sometimes it looks like it's trying to climb out of your jar and have a whole life of its own. Mold on a SCOBY is dry and fuzzy, and usually blue, green, or black. But always fuzzy. If it's not fuzzy, it's usually not mold. If it's just got brown strings, bubbles, or blobs, it's fine. Gross looking, but it's fine. Those brown strings are yeast strings, which are very good for your fermentation. That SCOBY went on to make several delicious batches and has many more generations. It just needed some love, a little less judgment from me. So if you're worried about your SCOBY looking funky, trust your nose and your gut. They'll tell you more than your eyes. What my fermentation fails have taught me. Fermentation has taught me a lot, not just about food, but about life. It is my form of therapy and my go-to when I'm needing a little pick-me-up. It taught me patience, because you can't rush microbes and you cannot rush the fermentation process. It taught me intuition. You learn to read a jar by smell, texture, and vibe. It taught me to document absolutely everything and to keep a journal, because I never remember how much ginger I used last week. And trust me, your future self will absolutely thank you. Now, I keep a little fermentation journal, just a simple notebook with dates, ingredients, temperatures, and notes like exploded violently or tasted like feet, but improved on day 6. These fails, they weren't failures. They were microbiological mentorship. So now it's your turn. I want to hear your fermentation fails. Did your hot sauce bubble over in your handbag? Did your kefir climb out of its jar like a ghost? Did your partner threaten to leave you if you make kimchi again? Pop a message down in the comments and share your story with me. I'm collecting the best and worst stories for future episodes. Please feel free to share any videos or pictures that you might have, and I'll give you a shout out when I do share these stories. Let's celebrate the chaos together. Thank you for joining me on this real, raw, and ridiculously funny fermentation journey. If today reminded you that everyone messes up, even after years of brewing, bubbling, and brining, then mission accomplished. To support the podcast to keep the episodes bubbling, visit my online shop or buy me a cup of coffee. It helps me create more content, clean up more explosions, and keep this community growing. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review or a comment, and share this episode with a fellow fermenter, especially the one who keeps blowing up your group chat with sourdough selfies. Until next time, stay cultured, stay curious, and may your jars always stay intact.